Thank you, Lindsay. That was wonderful as usual. And it's the first month, and as long as I can remember, Lord knows, I don't want to tell me how many years ago, I'll let you guys know how old I really am. That's been a tradition here for the Centers for Spiritual Living, is to go the first 4 weeks. Normally we go over the basic teachings of the science of mind and sort of cover the first 4 chapters. And Reverend Nicole and Janice read over the "we believe" statements and the core concepts of what we believe as a movement. And I want to come back and I want to cover 3 of those a little bit in more depth. But when we talk about basics, it's not anything that's simplistic and oversimplified. These are foundational things that we can use, because what we believe here and what we love to do here is we love to teach spiritual principles and practices for effective living. We believe in a spirituality that is very, very practical, very, very practical. And it's interesting because when you talk to someone, sometimes they get confused. They think spiritual growth is about some exotic study of a mystical event, and it takes a person 20 years to master it, to get the little nuance of it. But when we really look at it, it's all about going back to the Buddhist term of beginner's mind and doing these basic things over and over again until the goal is for every thought and action is attuned with whatever you want to call it, with spirit, with God, with heaven, where we are fully believed and engaged in this spiritual life. And it seems like the ego sort of resists that. The ego tells us, oh, no one can know as much as you. You've been studying for 20 years. But that's not so. That's not so. It says we have a great philosophy here. And it's been built on all of a bunch of different philosophies. So let me give you a little brief history about one of my favorite people, Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of the Science of Mind philosophy. Dr. Holmes was born and raised in the East, in Maine, but when he came of age, he came to California. And in California is where he did all his teaching, his healing, and his writing. And he was an amazing man. He filled theaters wherever he went, for all kinds of venues for speaking engagements. They said when you went into his house, there was a place, or there was walls where he would just be given accolades of honorary doctorate degrees. He preached prosperity to us, and people would just come and give him money on top of money on top of money. So he delivered the message that he was speaking to us over and over again. But he always called himself a synthesizer, one that put pieces together. He said, I don't have a theology all to my own. And the people that were so influenced to Dr. Holmes was, first and foremost, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Dr. Holmes used to tell us that reading Emerson was like drinking water. And Emerson was a great man, the great leader who told us to speak your mind with authority. Even if you change it in a week, speak it again with authority. And stand up and be counted for your intellect, because it's important. Dr. Holmes loved him. Dr. Holmes also studied an English judge by the name of Thomas Troward. And Thomas Troward was English born and educated. And he had read a lot of the old New Thought literature and studies, but he spent his working career in Punjab, India, as a judge there. And so, of course, he got infiltrated and absorbed some of the ancient Hindu traditions because he was surrounded by it there. Dr. Holmes also went out in to study a bit of the Upanishads. And the Upanishads is the older Hindu scripture. And with those things, among other things, some Taoist philosophies and some stuff of the East, he put this philosophy together. And essentially the philosophy that we teach, what the Science of Mind is a blend of Eastern and Christian mysticism. But Dr. Holmes went further because he was convinced there was a golden thread of truth that weaved its way through all the different faiths paths. And he called this the golden thread. And so that's sort of where we came from. We're a combination of all the different religions and faith paths. And what we have been studying is a lot of mysticism, both Christian and Eastern mysticism, for Dr. Holmes to put it together. We're also a bit more, some people call us non-traditional, meaning that we don't believe in one canon or one book that never changes. We believe that the world is evolving and that truth is evolving and that different people are bringing truth to the forefront. As Reverend Nicole says, you are a giver of truth, whether you're the CEO of Google or you are living on the streets. We're all here to deliver that truth message. But we're not heavy-handed. And so one of the two twin sins of religions people have talked about is absolutism and authoritarianism. And so they sort of go hand in hand. Absolutism means that my canon or my dogma or my truth is all there is. No other truth will ever be written, and that's the way it is. And authoritarianism is the place that supports that. That means unless you're a rabbi or a minister or a clergy member with certain training, you don't know that truth. But that's not what Science Mind teaches. You see, we don't teach people what to think. We teach them how to think. We use that effort of Emerson from afar that says, we teach you to be independent thinkers. So we have this great tradition that's totally inclusive. And one of the two things we focus on is oneness and allness. And oneness means we came from the same entity, which is God, spirit, life, whatever you want to call it. And allness means it's the whole shooting match. God is that place on high. And since God is made manifest throughout the world, it's that place where people are struggling too. There's no place where God is not. So Dr. Holmes had this great ambition and this great vision for us. He said this: the religion of the future will appear when religion gets over its superstition, science gets over its materialism, and philosophy gets over its dualism. We are forerunners in a campaign of spiritual freedom, intellectual integrity, and emotional stability in a spiritual world. It is our privilege to take part in a spiritual renaissance. That's hard words to own up to some 60 years after Dr. Holmes left the planet. But he had this great vision for us, and I think we are evolving toward that. We've had our ups and downs, I think. So let's look at, in 1927, Dr. Holmes was asked they were about ready to publish the first Science of Mind magazine, which some of us still read every day, have for years and years. And they said, Dr. Holmes, could you succinctly write just what it is that we believe as a movement, as a philosophy? And they said he took 20 minutes and wrote these we believe statements, whether they're 9 or 11, depending on the publication, that we focus on and are ring true to us and actually do tell us about our philosophy. So John, could you give me my first slide? This is the first one that he wrote. The language is a little long, but let's read it. We believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. This one manifests itself in and through all creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. The manifest universe is the body of God. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God. So let's break that down, though. It means that the God or Spirit that created everything doesn't go away. So the life of the divine is my life and your life each and every day. And the only thing that when we think it goes away is when we are at choice and we're looking to look at the physical world as all there is, rather than that's beyond the physical world, and that's what Dr. Holmes is talking about here. It's that life of spirit. And it's the same in the other faith paths. From the Bhagavad Gita, this is Krishna talking about the God or Godhead. And he says, I am the soul that exists in everything. I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of all lives. I am mind living in all creatures. I am light consciousness, the eternal word. I am the one who never changes. Going back a little more in time in the Hindu scriptures, the Upanishad says this: all that is manifest is filled with God, and from God all things flow. And going back to more of the East, the Taoism, Lao Tzu said, the great Tao pervades all things. It caused all things to come into existence. So we have this mystical tradition that behind everything is the life divine, as the great Hindu mystic Aurobindo will tell us. The Buddha took a little bit of a spin on the mind because he tended to do things. And the Buddha said, universal mind exists like a vast and boundless ocean. But it came from the East and from the West. So the Christianity, they're saying the same thing. It goes like this: I am the first and I am the last, and besides me there is no other. For in God we live and move and have our being. And my most favorite, most poignant one is this one: for they that dwell in love dwell in God, and God in them. So this is just reiterating this first principle, that the divine created everything, exists in everything, and is changeless in the form. It will be there when our physical experience is over. And so now let's go to the second principle, John, please. So the second principle is sort of about us and how we fit into this big picture. And it says, we believe in the individualization of the spirit in us, and that all people are individualizations of the one spirit. So this is iterating on this beautiful, eternal, invisible, and infinite presence that we are. And we are all expression of that one life. In the Hindu tradition, the one manifests as the many, they would say. Because you live within this divine life. You're not primarily a physical being, although we sort of view our life as our body so many times. But you're more than that. And that divine life is within you at all times. And as you turn to it, it turns to you, and you become empowered in that. Ernest Holmes tells us that God made you from itself. And he sort of chuckles and laughs, says, well, what else could he have made you from? Because God is all there is. You're made from God's Spirit. You're living the life of God, and you're passing on to the next experience. And Jesus said, I and the Father are one many times. So we are unique, though. We are unique. And sometimes that uniqueness gets us into a little trouble with judgment because we don't all look the same. And being unique is not sameness. And so when we want to look at the world, that's where diversity comes in. So all these different, beautiful, unique expressions of the divine come into play. But as we get into this life experience, especially in the past, we tend to group with those that sort of look like us. And that's gotten us into judgment. That's got us into a lot of the social issues that we have today, is that we're seeing ourselves as different. So we're not getting back to our concept of oneness and allness, because those two concepts bring us back to living and expressing in this beautiful world today. And so that's where the third principle that Ernest Holmes brings will help us out. And John, could you flip that for me? Third principle goes like this. We believe that heaven is within us and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. And so this heaven is this vision of as God or Spirit would see the world. Not the one that we see, not the one that our individual life sees. It's this vision how the world, let me paraphrase, would look to God. In all the beauty and all the variety and all the issues that are going on, but there's a truth working behind the scenes, underneath the surface, and that truth is a beautiful place. And we're evolving consciously, and I always say if you don't think we're evolving consciously, look back in terms of years or decades or centuries. All the growth we've made toward reaching this heaven within us, this beautiful, magical spot within us, and knowing that that is who we are. Because we do live this life of the divine. And as we turn to it, it turns to us. And so I have maybe 3 suggestions on, well, this is all well and good, and I know this is a lot of philosophy and a lot of theory to a lot of people, but how do we do it? My suggestion is take 3 minutes in the morning and just be still. Just be still. Maybe use the prayer of be still and know that I am God for 3 minutes and just be there. And then when you're through being still, because you've now just connected with that divine inside of you, not that it went anywhere, it just you brought your focus from the outside world into the world of the divine, which will give you some guidance. And then my next suggestion is to take the next 3 minutes, let love show you the way to live your life. Be in that essence of joy. Be in that essence of power. Be in that essence of not trying to judge anything by external events. Empower that beautiful divine expression that you are to come forward for the rest of the day. And trust those 2 things. Just trust those 2 things. And so I've been reading, since the year started, the book Science of Mind 365. If you guys were here, I'd ask you to raise your hands, and a lot of us read it. It's great daily practical readings from Ernest Holmes. And so that's the beauty of what we do as a philosophy, is we really believe in a practical philosophy. So it boils it down. So John, could you give me that next slide, if you can? So I just captured just a couple of the things that are in the Science of Mind 365 readings for this week. And it's pretty practical, pretty down to earth. And this is what it tells you to do. I now release the multitude of doubts and fears that crowd into my mind, and I may become quiet so the divine miracle may take place in my life. You're chilling out to let the divine come forward. It goes on to say, we should believe that God is the invisible partner in our lives that affirms that divine love goes before us and prepares the way. Because with our faith comes our life. And with our life based in our faith, bringing out the divine makes a better life for us and for everyone we meet. So I'll just end with asking you to adhere to what Ralph Waldo Emerson said. Get your bloated nothingness out of the way of the divine circuits. Thank you. God bless you. I love you.